Dark hallway. Child's bedroom door slightly ajar. A nightlight flickering. What if your 6-year-old daughter looked you dead in the eyes and told you the name of a man you had never, ever mentioned to her? Not just his name, his address. What he did to your family 10 years before she was even born. That's exactly what happened to one mother in rural Ohio, and when she finally figured out who her daughter had been talking to all along, she wished she never knew. Stay with me, because this one's gonna mess you up. 0, 45, 3. Small town Midwest. A modest house. Kids playing in a backyard. Autumn leaves. All right, let's back it up. The year is 2014. The town is Millbrook, Ohio. And y'all, I'm talking small. Like everybody knows everybody, one stoplight, the gas station is also the post office type of small. Teresa Calloway, and that's not her real last name. She asked to keep it private, is a 3-4-year-old single mom. She works double shifts at a diner 3 days a week, takes care of her mama on weekends, and somehow still finds time to be the kind of mom who makes pancakes shaped like dinosaurs on Tuesday mornings just because. She's got one kid, a daughter named Lily. Lily is 6 years old, curly red hair, gap-toothed smile, obsessed with frogs, and like a lot of kids her age, she has an imaginary friend. Now look, imaginary friends are totally normal. Child psychologists will tell you it's a sign of creativity, emotional intelligence, all that good stuff. Most kids have them. Most parents roll their eyes a little, play along, and move on. Teresa did the same thing. At first, Lily's imaginary friend had a name, Mr. Tall. Now right off the bat, I need you to notice something. Most kids' imaginary friends have names like Sparkles or Captain Biscuit or something silly like that, right? Mr. Tall. That's formal. That's specific. That's an adult name. But Teresa? She figured Lily probably heard it from a cartoon or something. No big deal. That was her first mistake. Child drawing at a table. Crayon drawings on paper. A boom corner. So Mr. Tall shows up in Lily's life around September of 2014, right around the time school starts back up. Lily starts setting an extra plate at dinner. She starts saving the seat next to her on the couch. She starts whispering to this invisible presence in the corner of her bedroom before bed. Teresa would peek in sometimes, and she'd see Lily sitting cross-legged on the floor, nodding her head real serious-like, saying things like, okay, I'll remember that. It gave Teresa a weird feeling. But again, kids are weird, right? That's just kind of their whole thing. But then the details started coming out. One evening, Lily comes downstairs during dinner and just casually goes, "Mama, Mr. Tall says you used to cry in the blue car." Teresa froze. Because, yeah, she used to have a beat-up 1998 Honda Civic, dark navy blue. And after a really rough breakup years ago, she used to sit in that car in the driveway and cry so Lily wouldn't hear her. Lily would have been maybe 3 at the time, too young to remember, and Teresa had never, ever talked about it. She asked Lily, "Sweetie, how do you know about the blue car?" Lily just shrugged and said, "Mr. Tall told me. He watches over us." Teresa laughed it off. Kids absorb stuff, right? She probably heard it somewhere, and her little brain just filed it under imaginary friend territory. But that night, Teresa had trouble sleeping. Something about the phrase, "he watches over us," just sat wrong. A mother checking door locks. A child's handwritten notes. A therapist's office. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Tall kept showing up. And the things he was telling Lily? They kept getting more specific. Lily told her mom that Mr. Tall said Grandma used to hide money under the floorboards, which Teresa knew was true because her late father used to do exactly that, but it was a family secret she'd never once brought up in front of Lily. Lily told her that Mr. Tall knew what her daddy looked like, even though Lily had never met her biological father. She described him tall, dark hair, a scar near his left eyebrow, and y'all, that was accurate. Teresa had one photo of him, buried in a shoebox in the closet. And then came the moment that made Teresa actually pick up the phone and call someone. One night, Lily wandered into Teresa's room around 2 a.m. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She just stood at the foot of the bed, totally calm, and said, "Mama, Mr. Tall says to tell you he's sorry about what happened at the Henderson farm. He says you were too young to understand." Teresa sat straight up in bed, because the Henderson farm wasn't just some random place. It was the location of a traumatic incident from Teresa's childhood, something that had happened when she was 9 years old, something she had literally never spoken about out loud to anyone except one therapist. 15 years ago, she grabbed Lily by the shoulders gently, but she was shaking and said, "Lily, who is Mr. Tall? Where did you meet him?" And Lily just pointed at the window and smiled. Teresa slept with every light on in the house that night. Google search bar, old newspaper clippings, a woman on the phone, police station exterior. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and honestly where this story shifts from creepy to criminal. Teresa starts doing what any rational person does when they're scared and confused and running on no sleep. She starts digging. She talks to Lily's school counselor, who says Lily is totally healthy, socially adjusted, no red flags. She even takes Lily to see a child psychologist, who says the imaginary friend phase is normal and the details Lily knows could be explained by kids absorbing more than parents realize. But Teresa's not satisfied, because that Henderson farm thing, that's not something a kid could have overheard. That's not something she whispered on a phone call. So she starts looking into her own past. She pulls up old records. She reaches out to distant relatives. She starts asking questions she'd avoided for years. And then she talks to her Aunt Rhonda. Aunt Rhonda is 72, sharp as a tack, and has the memory of an elephant. And when Teresa describes what Lily has been saying, Rhonda goes dead quiet on the phone. Then she says, real slow, "Teresa, there's something I never told you, something your mama made me promise to keep quiet." She told Teresa that when she was 9, the year of the Henderson farm incident, there had been a man who had been watching their family for years. A man who knew their routines, their secrets, their hiding spots for money, their private shames. His name was Gerald Haas, and Teresa had never heard that name in her life. But when she Googled it, her blood ran cold. Gerald Haas was a convicted stalker and voyeur who had operated across 3 counties in rural Ohio throughout the 1980s and 1990s. He was, by all accounts, a ghost. Neighbors described him as quiet, forgettable, the kind of guy you'd see at the hardware store and look right through. But behind closed doors, or more accurately, behind other people's closed doors, Gerald Haas had spent decades systematically surveilling families. He installed cameras. He intercepted mail. He kept detailed journals about people's private lives, their habits, their traumas, their family secrets. He was eventually arrested in 1999 and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Teresa's family had been one of his targets. She just never knew it. And here's the thing about Gerald Haas, the detail that made Teresa actually drop her phone on the floor when she read it. He was described as extremely tall, 6'5", thin, formal in the way he carried himself. And in his journals, which were partially made public during his trial, he had documented a habit of talking to children in neighborhoods he surveilled. He believed kids were pure messengers. In his own disturbing words, he'd introduce himself to them while their parents weren't watching. He called himself Mr. Tall. I'll let that sink in for a second. 14, 16, 30. Woman staring at a laptop screen. So now Teresa has a problem. And it's a big one. Because Gerald Haas had died in prison in 2008, 6 years before Lily ever said his name, 6 years before Lily was even old enough to string a sentence together. The man had been dead for 6 years. So how did a 6-year-old girl in rural Ohio know his name, his alias, his appearance, and intimate details about a family he had stalked decades before she was born? Teresa took everything to the local sheriff's department. They were less than helpful, let's say. Small town, cold case, dead guy, not exactly high priority. But she connected with a retired investigator named Dale Hutchins, who had actually worked the original Haas case back in 1999. Dale was in his late 60s by this point, but he was still sharp, and when Teresa told him what Lily had been saying, he agreed to meet. Here's what Dale told her, and y'all, I need you to really hear this. When they arrested Gerald Haas, they found his journals, hundreds of pages. But they also found something else, a series of letters addressed to families he had surveilled. Letters he had written but never sent. One of those letters was addressed to Teresa's mother. In it, Haas described the Henderson Farm incident in detail. He described Teresa as a child. He described the blue Honda Civic her mother drove. He described the hiding spot under the floorboards. Those letters were sealed as evidence and had never been made public. But Dale told Teresa that Haas, in one of his final letters written from prison, a letter sent to the county clerk, of all people had claimed that he planned to, and I quote, find a way to keep watching, even after. Nobody took it seriously at the time. Dying man, delusions of grandeur, whatever. But then Dale said something that truly haunted Teresa. You know what else we found at Haas's property? A list of children's names. Kids in the neighborhoods he'd watched. We always assumed it was for targeting. But one of the names on that list was a name we never could identify. He pulled out an old photocopy of the list. The last name on it? Lily. But Teresa's daughter hadn't been born yet when Haas was arrested. And her name wasn't a family name. Teresa had chosen it randomly from a baby name book. Dale looked at Teresa and said, I don't have an explanation for you. I wish I did. Now, here's where this story takes a turn that nobody, not Teresa, not Dale, not me, when I first came across this case, saw coming. Because while Teresa is falling apart, trying to make sense of all this supernatural creepiness, Dale keeps digging. Old school investigator instincts. He just can't let it go. And he finds something. Buried in the county records, completely overlooked during the original investigation, Gerald Haas had a brother. A younger brother named Raymond, who had largely stayed off the radar. Quiet guy, never convicted of anything. Lived about 40 minutes from Millbrook. Dale pays Raymond a visit. And Raymond? Raymond has been visiting Millbrook regularly for years. He has a daughter. And that daughter? She went to the same elementary school as Lily. And here's the kicker. Raymond had gotten hold of his brother's journals after Gerald died, all of them. The family had fought to get them released after the case closed, and because Gerald was dead and the statute of limitations had passed on most charges, they succeeded. Raymond had read every word. He knew the Calloway family secrets, every single one. And his daughter, a quiet, strange little girl who was in Lily's class, had been relaying those secrets to Lily on the playground, playing a game, pretending to be someone called Mr. Tall. She'd told Lily that Mr. Tall was a friend of her daddy's who liked to watch families. She'd coached Lily on what to say. She'd even slipped hand-drawn pictures under Lily's backpack pictures that Lily, being 6, thought were from her imaginary friend. It wasn't supernatural. It wasn't a ghost. It was a very disturbed little girl, coached by a very disturbed man, using the journals of a monster to psychologically manipulate a child. Raymond was arrested in 2015. He pled guilty to stalking and child endangerment. His daughter was placed with other family members and given intensive therapy. And Lily? Lily stopped talking about Mr. Tall the day after Raymond's arrest. Just stopped. Like a switch flipped. Teresa says Lily doesn't remember much of it now. Kids are resilient like that. But Teresa remembers everything. I think about this story a lot. And not just because it's creepy as all get out, though. Yeah, it absolutely is. I think about it because of what it says about how predators work. Gerald Haas didn't just steal information. He weaponized it. He understood that the most powerful thing you can do to a person is make them feel watched. Make them feel like someone knows their secrets, their shame, their pain. And his brother tried to use a child to carry that same torch? That's not just creepy. That's calculated. That's generational. That's the kind of evil that doesn't die when the person does it passes down. Teresa told me, told the podcast where I found this story, that the hardest part wasn't the investigation. It wasn't even the fear. It was looking at her daughter and knowing that someone had used her baby as a pawn, that Lily had been played, had been an instrument in someone else's twisted game without even knowing it. She said, I taught Lily every stranger danger rule in the book, but I never thought about the kids. I never thought the threat could come from another child. And that, right there, is the lesson that nobody talks about enough. So here's what I want you to think about. Who are the people around your kids that you haven't looked twice at? What information do you assume is private that maybe isn't? And how well do we really know the families behind the kids our children call friends? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely read every single one, and I want to know, does this story scare you more because it started as something supernatural? Or because the real explanation was somehow worse? If this story messed you up the way it messed me up, hit that like button. It really does help this channel more than you know. And if you're new here, subscribe, because every week I bring you stories just like this one. True, terrifying, and way too close to home. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe out there, and maybe check in on what your kids are whispering about in their rooms tonight. Just saying.